When digitization in banks began more than a decade ago, it was, of course, a step change in improving operations and automating services. Now, the emerging trends in AI are significantly reshaping trade finance and corporate banking still further.
Task-performing agentic AI, large language models and intelligent automation are all moving from proof of concept to production in the sector. Well, to discuss where banks currently stand in adopting AI and the challenges they face, we're joined by Marc Smith, founder and CEO of Conpend. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you.
Now, over the past 2 decades, how have banks evolved in AI adoption and measurable gains in outcomes, productivity and business transformation? And why has full digitization been just so difficult?
Well, maybe I'll start with your last question. So I think the difficulty is actually the business change side of it. So people actually accepting that a machine can do something that they used to previously do and to trust the machine. And I think this is something that just takes time. It's also a generational problem. So we're seeing that younger people are more interested and willing to adopt something and actually take it at face value than older people, which is, I think, quite logical. And that takes time. And I think that's also a very human problem. So it's not a technology one. I would say that's just actually being human. And I think which is fine.
Following up on this, Marc, a little on this topic, why has full digitization been so difficult in particular areas like trade finance and lending? And what lessons should banks draw for the next wave of AI-driven innovation?
Yeah, so maybe the thing is, what is digitization? So real digitization is if I create a document or I want to send you something, I will create it digitally. It will be digital. And then I will share it with you digitally and you'll process it digitally. Then it's like completely digital. I think with trade finance especially, but also we see this also in the lending space. Often what happens is I create something digitally, it gets printed on paper, sent to you physically, and then you have to convert it back into something which is digital. That's a very inefficient process. And actually, I think the movement towards more native digital exchange of information is a really big, important step also to enabling further AI.
Where has Conpend helped banks overcome some of those long-standing barriers, particularly around document-heavy processes as well as compliance?
Well, we focus particularly on first creating a digital standard. So not standardization, but things that come to you on paper, we convert that to data and then we allow you to process it. So this is critical, for example, for AI. If it's not digital, it's actually not so useful. And I think when it concerns compliance, this means taking the work away from very mundane, simple tasks and transforming that to something that the machine just tells you it's okay to make this payment or go to the next step in the process.
With the emergence of agentic AI and more autonomous systems, how do you see the impact for decision makers in banking in the past decade? And will that change in the next decade?
It will. And I think it will change very quickly. So I think this is actually a very exciting development because agentic means we're actually also making these systems to a certain degree autonomous in the decision-making process. So they become advisors rather than something which I just delegated a boring activity to. And I think this will radically change decision-making and actually transform in many ways things that have been traditional way of doing business for years. I think that can really make a difference. For example, if you want something financed and you just submit your request, it will give you an answer immediately, maybe, or within 10 seconds, rather than going through a very lengthy credit process. This is something that agentic AI can do already today. And I think it's a development of how long do we have to wait before we trust it to actually adopt it.
Now, we know that many banks are still hesitant or early within their AI journey. So what is your ultimate tip for how banks can successfully embrace AI and solutions like Conpend AI?
I would say be brave, because I think a lot of it's also to do with uncertainties about the legal risks, what actually that might mean for the trustworthiness of the service they're offering. But I think you have to start somewhere. So my ultimate tip would be start small and grow it and don't wait, because I think the most important thing is make sure you're educating yourself and exposing yourself to this as while it's happening, because otherwise you will get stuck behind the curve.
Now today, Mark, many banks are facing rising compliance costs and operational inefficiencies. How is AI changing the way banks approach these particular challenges?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. With the shift away from the person or the operator or the user or the banker taking a decision in whether something should or should not happen, moving that towards a machine that's actually taking the decision or actually acting as advisor and saying, look, I think you can do this based on this analysis which I've done, and I can prove it because if you really doubt it, here's all the evidence. That is obviously a big shift because it means a lot of work that's done today, which is very mundane tasks, can be completely eliminated. And then it becomes a very different dynamic, also in the relationship with your customer.
Now, how can Gen AI redefine customer engagement, product personalization, and advisory services in banking without compromising trust and compliance? I see you smiling there.
Yeah, that's a lot in one. But I think the big game changer will be also the speed in which these things can be done. Now, if you want advice, you might text your banker and say, hey, no, I want to issue a letter of credit, or I want to do something. Or you go to the portal and you start entering you go to your banking portal. And I think a lot of that will change, where a lot of this advice will actually happen while you're doing it. So it will become so I won't be going, if you like, and requesting something to a person. That will be processed before. And the person at the end will just say, really glad that you're working with us. And so there will be, I think, a personal element to it, but it will be much more on the relationship side and the actual doing the work. This is what computers will do.
A fascinating chat. Thanks, Mark, for giving us your time on Sibos TV. It'd be good to catch up with you again in the future and see where we are on this journey. That's Marc Smith, founder and CEO of Conpend.